Ofgem are looking to add £17 to each of our bills per year to account for the additional bad debt that's been built up in the energy market. However, having looked at their document, I think that we can actually get this overturned and not have it put through. I'm pretty excited about this. I have a meeting tomorrow with them, and I'm just going to talk you through really quick the 3 reasons why I think that there is no justification for this extra increase to our bills. I'm just going to jump straight into it. So, just so you're aware, bit of background, Ofgem are looking to add £17 to our energy bills because of the bad debt that's built up. And they've given a graph in their document that explains why they think there's this extra bad debt. And it shows there's something like a £250 million difference in cap period 10A, so that's from April 23 to June 23, about £250 million where there's going to be more bad debt than there is allowance already built into the price cap. So just so you're aware, there is already an allowance in the price cap for bad debt, and Ofgem is saying it's no longer efficient to cover the costs. And the 3 things I'm going to talk through to explain why I think they're wrong, and as I said, I have a meeting with them tomorrow. There's a big group meeting where we get to discuss this particular point, so I'm going to bring up all of these things to them tomorrow. First of all, I think they've made a mistake in their bar chart, in the graph that they've given to justify the increase. Secondly, I think it's morally reprehensible if they pass on the costs of the involuntary prepayment meter ban to consumers. And thirdly, I need to understand the intention of this adjustment, because if it's to recoup costs, I don't really think there are enough there. And if it's to adjust the allowance so it more accurately reflects costs going forwards, I think that's already been covered by the new additional support credit bad debt allowance they added in October, this year. So let me run you through those 3 things. And the first one is obviously the big one where I'm calling Ofgem out for making a mistake. And I'm saying I think they've made a mistake. I'm going to ask them this question, but to me it's logical that they have made a mistake. And I'll show you why I think that. Okay. So on the screen right now, you should be able to see these numbers that mean nothing to you. It's complicated. I'm not going to go too into it, but this is effectively a table that they gave in their document explaining why they want there to be an increase. And don't worry about what all of this means. The only bits I'm going to show you here are AA, which is all allowances. So that's a combination of these 3 here, which is bad debt, working capital, and debt administration. These are the allowances that they say are already built into the cap to take account of bad debt in the industry. And this here is just a summation, so all allowances spread across direct debit, standard credit, and prepayment meters. And it's over these cap periods. Okay. And these are the numbers they gave. So I just put these in here so I could play with them. And all I went to look at was the differences, because what seemed weird to me is that they are using this graph here, this bar chart, to justify the need for this cap. And it seemed weird to me that the allowance in 10A was so small. Why is it so much smaller than 9B and 9A? For reference, the price cap in 9A was around 3,500. And in 10A, it was around 3,300. So there's less than a 10% drop in the price cap. Here, it was 4,200, came down to 3,200. So there's about a 25% drop. But the allowance, as you can see, that's about a 50% drop there from 9B to 10A. And here, that's about a 35% drop from 9A to 10A, even though the cap only fell by less than 10% across 9A to 10A and 25% from 9B to 10A. So I did a comparison of the numbers they gave in these figures here to show that from 9A, all of the allowances should have fallen by about 5%. But if you actually look at 9A to 9B, the allowances fell closer to about 35%, which would be correct. This chart would be correct if this bar here was the figure for 10B. Similarly, if you look at 9B, which is this big orange one, the allowances should have fallen by 15 to 20%. However, it looks more like a 50% fall, which is what you would get if they were comparing it to figures from 10B. So what I'm saying Ofgem have done here as a mistake is in this table, in this graph, bar chart, where they're justifying the need for this extra allowance, I think they've put 10B's figures here, which is a £2,000 price cap, rather than 10A's, which was a £3,200 price cap. It's a big difference. I think this orange bar, is about £100 million short and should be closer to 300 million rather than 200. So that removes a big chunk of the necessity for this allowance. But there's still obviously a big £200 million difference that needs to be addressed. That brings me on to my second point. As part of this, Ofgem is saying in this period and some of this period from February onwards, so just so you're aware of the months we're looking at, this covers January to March 2023, and this covers April to June 2023. They're saying there was about a £25 million per month bad debt increase due to the ban on involuntary prepayment meters installations. So if you don't remember what this was, at the beginning of this year, it came out in the news that a lot of the big suppliers were hiring companies to forcibly fit prepayment meters into people's homes, and they were doing them in homes of vulnerable people, which is illegal. It's against their standard license conditions. It was a big thing in the news, and Ofgem, who apparently knew about it beforehand and were in conversations with energy suppliers, so I've been told, once it hit the news, they then decided to react and went, okay, we're going to put in a voluntary ban on force-fitting prepayment meters. So you can still ask for a prepayment meter if you want one, but suppliers can't force it on you at the moment. And they reckon that the cost of stopping energy suppliers from force-fitting prepayment meters has added about £25 million per month to their bad debt figures. So across this period, that's £75 million. And Ofgem are proposing that this allowance takes that into consideration and gives energy suppliers that money, to which I say that is morally reprehensible. They were forced to stop, or they were voluntarily forced to stop installing prepayment meters because they broke the rules. If they break the rules, they should suffer the punishment. That shouldn't be passed on to the consumers. We shouldn't have to pay for that. I think if Ofgem pass that cost on, they are setting a precedent for the bigger suppliers that say long term, there is no downside to you breaking the rules. We'll put in a short-term block and then give you that money back through the customers by increasing their bills. So for the big six energy suppliers that know they can weather any storm, they can keep breaking the rules. And sure, there might be a temporary ban here and there, but they'll get their money back anyway. I think that's a dangerous precedent to set, and I think energy suppliers will be forced to pay that £75 million to take on that burden. That's their problem. They shouldn't have broken the rules. They were doing things illegally and damaging people's lives, vulnerable people's lives. We shouldn't give them money for that. Again, I'll put that forward to Ofgem, but assuming they agree with that, then that's another £75 million reduction. That brings us down to just over £100 million difference if you include the £100 million up here and the £75 million down there. So there's about £100 million difference there, which is no different to this bit here when Ofgem didn't think we needed a price cap adjustment. But that's again assuming they take on my view of the ban on involuntary prepayment meters and that this number is actually wrong. The third point that I'll bring up is that I don't understand whether this adjustment is to recoup costs, so to give them back this money here, or whether it's an adjustment to an allowance that they're saying is wrong. So if they're saying the current allowances are wrong and under allow for a cost, then I would argue that that 50 million of this here is additional support credit, bad debt, which is going to be covered now by the new allowance they brought in from the 1st of October. They announced that decision in August, they're bringing that new allowance in. We're already paying, so you can reduce this by a further 50 million. And if it's to recoup costs, then I would argue that the headroom allowance exists for a purpose. Now, I hate the headroom allowance because it literally covers things they haven't thought of. But in this case, this is what it does. So the headroom allowance in this quarter alone, in those 3 months, was £300 million. In this 3 months, where they actually had an over allowance of about 50 million quid, the headroom allowance was 400 million. Across a year, it's about 1.2 billion pounds. And we're talking about there possibly being an under allowance of 100 million. I don't really see there being justification for this allowance because I think this figure's wrong. I think the involuntary prepayment meter debt is their problem. They shouldn't have broken the rules and there needs to be a punishment and this is it. Like, otherwise, why would they change anything? And I also don't think that there's any significant gap there, that the headroom allowance covers it adequately. So I'm going to obviously put all of these thoughts forwards to Ofgem. Hopefully they agree with me. I'll send them over. I'll also send them this video because it might be useful for them to prepare an answer to this part at the very least, because this is quite clearly the wrong figure here. in 10A. I do believe they've accidentally put 10B here and just labelled it as 10A. Either that, or there's some justification here I completely don't understand. And if that's the case, then Ofgem can come back to me and tell me that, and I'll come back to you guys and let you know. But yeah, I'm actually quite optimistic that I'll be able to convince them and the consumer groups that this bad debt additional cost isn't necessary. And I hope that when they come around to doing their next policy consultation or statutory consultation, they'll go, actually, we're not going to do anything. That'll be seen in the future. For now, I'm going to send this video to Ofgem. I don't need you guys to do anything. I just want to keep you informed. I've got the meeting with them tomorrow, which will give me more information, and then I'll write my responses to their questions from the document. If you do want to read Ofgem's document, or at least look at this graph in their table directly, there's a link in the description below. And I've also added that link to the update I've posted to the petition. So you can go and download the document. This is figure 4.1. And these numbers are in table 6.2, I think it is, 6.1, 6.2. So you can get all of that information to see that it just doesn't quite line up correctly. Yeah, I'll come back to you tomorrow and let you know what my answers to their questions are. It may not be until next week that I give you the answers to the questions for us to post to Ofgem. We have until the 2nd of November to do that. I also posted a video last week about the additional wholesale cost review. They had an open letter with half a dozen questions in that. If you haven't got round to doing that work yet, you can still do that before the 23rd, some point over this weekend. There's a link to that video in the description below. And I believe I also put a link in the petition update. So yeah, please do get involved. I'll really need your help. If Ofgem don't agree that this figure's wrong here and with my points, I'll really need your help telling them that we disagree with another increase to the price cap. But yeah, apart from that, have a good weekend, everyone. If I don't speak to you beforehand, as I said, I'll keep you up to date. Please don't forget to subscribe to the Over 50s Money YouTube channel. Like this video, turn on notifications, share it around everywhere. It helps us to keep helping you. So thank you.